if you are not thinking about the way you're selling, the way that your sales, marketing, and service teams are interacting, and you're not thinking about how can we channel our buyer, you're likely going to fail moving into 2024 and beyond.
Welcome back, everybody. I am Alex. I'm here with Chris Dupre, and we are talking about how sales is a team sport.
Yes.
Chris, you're an expert in this arena. You're an expert as a coach and as a trainer. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
When you think of a team sport, right? And what's funny is I'm not a big sports guy, but I was in a past life. So you think about football. You can have the best quarterback who has the best arm in all the land.
Right.
But if your offensive line is made up of, 5'6" dudes that weigh 120 pounds and have never bench pressed anything in their lives, that quarterback's probably never going to get the opportunity to throw the football or to run because the defensive line is going to just come and tackle, right?
Totally.
So when we think about this in sales, you can have great sales folks, but if marketing isn't supporting them, they're out on an island. You could have phenomenal marketing and sales folks are going off in their own realm and you're not seeing any results, right? And then you could have the point of sale could be great. We get it sold, but we sell it in a way to just get it across the finish line, and the service team has to deal with all these promises that are made or all these broken things, right? So when we look at today's buyer, it isn't as transactional as it was. It isn't just about making the sale. It isn't just about getting people in. Like, people want to feel like they've been heard. They want to actually understand what it is they're buying, because as we spend money today, we have so many options, we have so many choices, that trust really needs to be established if we're going to spend any significant amount of money. And that can be different for different folks. Right? We're not talking about buying a pack of bubble gum, but anything where there's like a buying decision or a thought process, whether in the business to consumer space, the business to business space, the business to consumer space, like you could keep going.
Right.
Trust has to be built, and it's not something that can be done alone today, right? So we're here talking about this on a podcast. Somebody else is going to, like, that same buyer is going to go on the internet. They're going to go talk to their friends. They're going to go find something else, like all these different
They're going to
pieces.
use all these tools that they have at their disposal that maybe 20 years ago we didn't have at our disposal.
Right. Well, again, in a consumer model, 20 years ago when you needed a TV, you went to Circuit City, you talked to a high school kid and said, talk to me about these TVs. They told you all about them, and you took what they had to say and you bought a TV. Today, there's all this content and video and walkthroughs and testimonials and best of list, all this stuff about what TV you're going to buy. So if you don't just purchase it online, you go to the store, you tell them specifically what you want, and you ask maybe 2 or 3 questions to that expert who's in the store, and then you walk away.
Right.
So buying's changed, which means selling has to change, right? So in this old, it's probably not the 80s. It's probably the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Like, in a world where the internet didn't drive everything, you had sales folks that were the only source of information.
Right. They were that trusted resource. You walk into a brick and mortar store and you'd face-to-face, just like we are right now, talking to each other.
Yeah. Or, the sales rep that would find an in, and this still happens. Like, I get it that we still do this and it's okay. But they prospect, they cold call, they get in there. And before, they used to just get in and talk and wine and dine, do all these things. Well, it now needs the backing of a full team.
Yeah.
It's not as easy, like, the solutions are different. The products are different. There's an abundance in every single space.
Mm-hmm.
And so to just think that one human can be able to do all the things that you need to do to drive revenue is just, it's sort
antiquated.
of silly.
Yeah, it's antiquated.
Yeah.
So that,
100%.
because that makes me think about like the lone wolf salesperson.
Yes.
Because I feel like, my father worked in the car industry, and I grew up in the car industry where like sales guys it was cutthroat. It was like they just wanted to make commission.
Yeah.
They would do whatever they had to do to step over you to get a sale.
Yeah.
And it was very cutthroat, lone wolf sort of mentality. And it seems like that's really not working anymore these days. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, so are there scenarios where that could still work? Sure.
Sure.
If we didn't say that, then we'd be no better than anybody else, right? But the reality is, you're going to talk to multiple people from the same company.
Yeah.
Right? Because 20, 30 years ago, that same person worked at that company for their whole career. Today, that's not true. Right? Like I go back to some of the things that like sales processes that I went through when I was the chief operating officer here. And I know some of the people have moved on to different companies, right? And so it was really important that I actually talked to multiple people so that I didn't feel like it was just passed off, right? But the big reason the lone wolf thing doesn't work anymore is that I think we look to community more than we did maybe in the past. We aren't enthralled by that one human anymore. There's so much information. You need an army to help you with all the right materials because there's so much stuff out there. So if you're a business leader, do you want a sales team, let's say of 10, where you have one human that is just this lone wolf and they're doing better than everybody else, and then you have, everybody else just doing poorly? Like, to me, that's not sustainable.
Right.
Because now that one person who's driving most of your revenue and operating in a silo by themselves has all this control.
It does. It puts all the power in their hand. They have all the leverage.
Right.
Yes, totally.
And you see those companies don't grow and sustain the growth. And let's call it, let's actually call it something better. Sustain profitable growth.
Okay.
Right? So a lone wolf, if they're only measured with revenue, right, can go make really unprofitable transactional deals.
Yeah.
Right? But so that's that. And then when you get into the power of a sales team that operates as a sales team, that is where the power of learning, the power of, like, instead of having the one versus the many, you now have all this collective moving up. So from an organizational leadership perspective, you're like, I would much rather have 5 really solid sales folks than one great one and 4 that I probably should have fired years ago.
Sure. So that's a very interesting point, because it makes sense that you'd want to have 5 people operating at like 80 or 85% versus one person operating at 100 and everyone else just tanking, right?
Yeah.
So how do you, as a business leader or a CEO or, whatever that title head is, how do you get your team to understand that and sort of break that lone wolf mentality?
Yeah. So and the funny thing is we've been talking about, like, the sales teams.
Yeah.
I want to bust it out a little bit broader to really encapsulate what all this is, because what we're talking about is you have to build a collaborative sales process, right? So a collaborative sales process is huge. And so what do we mean? From the salesperson's perspective, it's that they work as a team to identify areas that they need to get better at. You have this actual sales process that is more of a buying process than it is our sales process for ourselves, right? So it's like, what decisions do buyers actually need to make, and how do we help them get there, right? So that's for the sales folks. But then there's this other piece of, like, the worst thing that can happen, especially if you're an organization that, like, say, does the ask you answer, and you've invested money in a content manager or a videographer, and you hear the following phrase from a sales rep: "Oh, I didn't know we had that piece of content. That could have really helped me close the deal."
Yeah.
Right? So I've said this to CEOs, and then I've looked at the marketers that are sitting next to them, and the marketer's like, yes, I hear that all the time. And it's the CEO's problem, because they haven't made, or the sales leader, depending on the size of the organization,
Right.
They haven't made working with marketing a thing, right? So part of this is, in this collaborative piece, is what's happening in sales has to get transitioned to the marketing folks so they understand what's happening, so that we make content that helps build trust and helps educate buyers through this journey so they know the decisions that they need to make. They understand the problems that are there. They see all that stuff.
Right.
And so then the sales folks need to, like, it's this circle of this cycle that they all have to work together to understand. And then there's their friends in service, if you're a service company, or in product, like the manufacturers, the delivery, the customer success people. Mm-hmm. If they aren't part of, hey, what does that initial conversation, what does that education sound like? Then we might be deviating and hurting their part, right? So that's collaborative sales process, step one.
Right.
Okay, to building this team, getting away from lone wolf.
Shifting the perspective and the perception to try to be more collaborative, right?
Right, and the whole idea of, like, we win together.
Right.
Like, and I think that the days of a sales rep could win, but the company could fail, need to shift. I don't think that organizations are into that anymore, right? I don't think they ever were, but I think with all of the crazy that's been happening in the economy, and just all this stuff, it's the organization needs to win, the team needs to win. That's how we start with this collaborative sales approach. And oh, by the way, if we can get to the point where, let's say that we're both sales reps and I do the discovery and I find out that, like, there's something that you could bring to the conversation that'll help us get it over the
finish line. Yeah.
I should be comfortable bringing you in to help me close the deal. Whereas a lone wolf would never do that.
Right.
And so instead of helping the buyer achieve the thing, solve the problem, expand on the opportunity, we would be selfish and potentially lose the deal because we don't ever want to let anybody else help us.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So that is the beginning point, is we have to have this mindset shift from the one to the many, from sales is responsible to revenue, to marketing and sales and service are all part of this revenue picture. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, marketing has more influence because we consume more stuff on the internet before we ever talk to sales.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in your experiences, this is all fascinating, right? In your experiences, when you start to interface as a consultant and you're starting to coach sales teams and trying to help them have this symbiosis with their marketing teams, do they even know that it's broken? Do they even realize, like, the problems that they're having?
No.
So how do you get them to discover that in a way that is genuine and you're not like telling them, basically?
Yeah. So you know, one of the many ways is asking that question in a shared group of, like, have you ever heard this statement? Right? The one about, I didn't know we had the piece of content. Like, that just opens their eyes. And then you can start a conversation. Right.
And that happens all too often when they're like, I wish I had this video to send in. And then the marketing team's like, but we do have this video. Yeah. And they just don't know.
Right.
It's right in front of them.
It's right there.
Yeah. So bridging that gap.
Yeah. So bridging that gap. Also talking about, how do you show up as a buyer yourself? One of the craziest things, as I've been talking to companies, is they don't start from the frame of, or I should say, their frame is, I'm the seller, they're the buyer, therefore they're different than me. Whereas we're all humans in 2023, soon to be 2024.
Right.
And so while I might not buy the service that I sell or the product that I still interact with marketing messages. I still interact with sales professionals. Like, so
totally.
How do I want to be addressed? How do I, and you got to break through that.
Really humanize it in a way. Yeah.
But here's the biggest thing that I find as I talk to these folks is they never watch or really understand it. It's everything happens and then they move on to the next thing because they don't record their interactions and then watch them.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So
yeah, explain that further. So
So here's the funny thing. Most organizations that I start working with or that I talk to don't record sales calls. So The marketers rely on sales to tell them what questions they're being asked, what buyers care about or whatever. Or they do research on their own. They might try to reach out to current customers, but it's a lot of a guessing game. And
it's not based off of like real data or
Yeah.
like real conversations.
Yeah,
It's
we
just an assumption almost.
Yeah, we play the persona or avatar game and then think all of our buyers are just like this. And so we live in this make-believe world, and the sales folks, because nobody watches their calls, because they just move from one thing to the next, don't analyze, why is it that we lose sometimes? What could be helping us get further? Service just basically is waiting for the giant snowball that's coming down the hill of sales to just crush them into what did sales do. Right? That's generally what I see when I start. And so this idea of record your sales interactions and then let marketing watch them, let the service team watch them.
Okay.
And oh, by the way, sales as a team, go watch these. Go actually see what's happening. Sales leaders, actually know why you're losing deals, which is more important than actually understanding why you're winning deals. And we can talk about that if you want.
Yes, definitely.
But this idea is when we watch real interactions with real people that could buy from us, everybody in that spectrum, that team, gains invaluable information about their buyer, which is truly like the second part to understanding revenue growth today as a team sport is really, so we've got the collaborative sales process or the collaborative sales approach. And then we have this, we have to truly understand our buyer.
Right.
And
at a fundamental level.
At a fundamental level.
Know what's,
yeah. But we often skip that part. I was at an event where it was marketers, salespeople, and most importantly, the owners or CEOs. And this was, you're talking companies that range probably from 10 million in annual revenue to 200 million in annual revenue.
Wow. Okay.
That sell multiple different things, service and product.
Yeah. So
big
variety, big range of companies.
It was a group of organizations that do the same thing, but they have multiple product lines or service offerings.
Okay, understood. Gotcha.
And when I asked the question, who's recording their sales conversations today? It's a room of about 100 people. 0 hands went up.
Not one.
Not a single hand.
Really?
Correct.
Wow.
And there's all these reasons why. And we have content on that. We have all that stuff out there. Bottom line is it's all BS.
Yeah.
Right? It's all BS.
It must come out of a place of fear, too, because as a salesperson, 100%. Like if I had a bad sales call, I wouldn't want to pick it apart and show it to my whole team because I'd be embarrassed, But I think what you're saying and what I'm picking up is that like those are those moments where you can really learn the most.
Yeah. So I'll give you a great example. We have one of my clients, Opus Partners. They're a great company out of New Zealand. They help people plan their retirements, like through, like how do you figure out your wealth gap that you're going to have when you retire, and how do you bridge that gap by investing in real estate in New Zealand, right? Really cool. It is likely the biggest investment that you're going to make in yourself. It's probably like, it's all this stuff. So the process has to be a team sport. It has to be collaborative, all these things, right? But the reason that they're crushing it is when we come into our sessions together, a couple things are true. Thing one, the managing partner of the practice is sitting at the table, is probably the most present human, and is always ready to contribute, and is also not there judging his people.
Gotcha. So you really need to have buy-in from the top down.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's there.
That's important. Got it.
Then the head of marketing and the marketing manager are sitting in the room, contributing, working with the rest of the team. And then you have all the sales folks. Okay. I start by asking for wins and losses. I never get a win from them. Now, they're winning. They're winning a lot. But the reality is every piece of value comes from, I had this interaction with a buyer and this happened. Let's talk about how we make it not happen again. And now let's take a trip back to lone wolf. Okay. Is a lone wolf going to put light on an issue they had so that others don't experience it?
I would say no, definitely not.
Right. They're never going to do that.
They're going to try to sweep it under the rug. Yeah.
Right. They're going to make excuses about it, sweep it under the rug, move on to the next thing.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Now, the most evolved might watch it, figure out what went wrong so they don't do it again. Right?
Right. Nip it in the butt kind of thing. Yep.
But who wins there?
That salesperson.
That salesperson.
Maybe if
they do
really
that,
dial it in. Yeah. But that's
it. Right. So the company might gain a little bit.
Sure.
What I'm seeing with this company is they put the microscope on all these losses. So what happens? They don't make the same mistakes. And they have 10 reps, let's say, 10 financial advisors that help work with clients.
Wow.
And so if one of them interacts with somebody in this way, we're going to talk about it, we're going to role play it so they know, so everybody, the collective knows. But here's the freaking coolest part. The marketers are there. And instead of it just being about how do we handle this situation the next time, they're going, how can we create materials? How can we create content? Mm-hmm. How can we go to our podcast? How can we go to video? How can we write articles that will educate people before they get to us so this doesn't come up? How do we create stuff that now goes into our buyer's guide, that now is part of the pre-call materials that make this problem set go away? How do we refine our messaging? So in one call, somebody brings a problem. Everybody there is watching each other's calls, so they're like everybody gets what's happening and they understand the buyer. And there's a discussion and a role play and a brainstorm around how do we fix it.
Okay.
The outcome, brother, they win a lot. Their close rate has gone up over 25% this year from last. And by the way,
just in 1 year.
Yeah.
25%.
And now here's the thing.
Wow.
Is it easy to borrow money to buy things today? No.
Interest rates are all jacked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one would assume if you're in the industry of helping people buy rental properties where they have to get money lent to them, mm-hmm. they should not be doing really well.
Right.
Their close rate went up.
Wow. Because
of the way that they collaboratively approach growth. They see it as a team sport, right? Mm-hmm. They're not just individuals. They're a group trying to do a thing.
Yeah.
And they're having success from it.
So, Chris, I heard a lot of really great things and some big takeaways there. And I'm curious how this translates day to day for a team like Opus who's crushing it, right? You were talking about role plays. Mm-hmm. We're talking about watching game tape. We're talking mm-hmm. about assignment selling. What should another company that maybe isn't operating at a level like Opus but wants to, what would you recommend day to day it looks like for them?
So the first thing is hit record on your sales call. Don't hit record. Actually go if you're a company that has IT that controls your video conferencing apps, go set record as the default.
Okay.
Right? And now for anybody that's like, people need to be notified about being recorded, Zoom and Teams and all those places make the notification for when people get in there. You all know that too because you've been in those meetings. So let's not let the excuse of we need to notify people be a thing. All right? Yeah. So set it up for auto record.
Yeah.
If somebody says I don't want to be recorded, there's also a stop button that you can stop the recording, right? So
no way.
I know, right?
Crazy.
I know. Yes. But these are listen,
but just
man.
To have it
these
set
are,
up as a default, and then worst case, if you have to hit stop,
then you
stop.
can. Right.
No big deal.
So there's zero excuse to not do this.
Right.
So let's just everybody acknowledge that right now. There's zero excuse to not do it. So set them up to record. Then set a very low goal. Hey, sales reps, watch one of your calls this week. Marketing, watch one sales call this week. Leader, watch at least one sales call this week, right? Get into it. And then the next step is go have a conversation about what you saw, right? Now I'm assuming a couple things here. that you have a trusted, safe work environment where people like want everybody to be successful, right? So if you're struggling on the culture front, that's a separate conversation that I'm glad to have with people. But I'm for planning purposes, I'm assuming we have a healthy culture where people are not afraid to do these things. If that's not the case, this all still can be done. There's just work that has to happen before it, right?
Right.
So that's where we start, is record and watch some of these calls. Second step is have meetings that are not focused on the minutia, but are focused on what did we learn from this and how do we get better, okay?
Is this a once a week thing? Is this a bi-weekly?
Yeah, I like it weekly,
Okay.
right? And then the next part is let's break down these silos, right? So you bring marketing into it, even if they're like, why are we sitting through a sales meeting? Because it's important, right? Because it's important.
It is. I used to be one of those people that was like, I don't understand why we need to watch sales calls, and it's completely changed how we look at the content we make and everything we do. So
yeah, it's once you do, it's like one of those things. Once you do it, you're gonna go, why haven't I done this forever?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So those are the initial things, but it can be really hard because role playing is something that people don't love. Having conversations about call reviews isn't something people love. Leaders in an organization have a tendency to want to solve everything without thinking about the problem. So I highly encourage, not because I'm a sales coach or a business coach, but because I've seen when I've been COO, I mean, I still sit in an executive role at Impact, and work on the business. There is a huge difference, even in a company where our CEO, my boss, is one of my best friends, right?
Yeah.
We're all real tight. But here's the deal. You can be a prophet to the world, but no one in your hometown is going to listen to you.
It's so true.
Right?
It's so true.
So our best meetings are ones that are facilitated or guided by a coach, right? Because a coach, might say the same thing that the leader is, but there's a lack of defensiveness when it comes from an outsider. There just is, right? And everybody that's listening to this has experienced it in some form or fashion, right?
It's true though.
Yeah. If you go back to like when you were a kid playing sports, when your parent was like, keep your eye on the ball, or you got to get in a ready position, you're like, oh, okay, mom, okay, dad, right?
Yeah, whatever, mom, whatever you say, dad.
But if your coach was like, focus on this, do that, you're like, okay, right? Because it's different.
Instantly changes the
whole
dynamic.
Right.
Right.
So coaching in this area of we want to change the way we're doing something that people might resist, that is why coaches exist. One of the many reasons, right? So if you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, there are people that can help. Like, we are a place that can help you, but there's plenty of others, right?
Totally.
But this is how you get to this collaborative selling. This is how we win in today's market, because the era of individuals isn't going to work in the rest of this year, next year, and the years after, because the internet's not going away. ChatGPT and AI are only making more content available. Yeah. And so the right content that is curated to our actual buyer, that is nurtured and leveraged at the right times and brought together, and all of those things are super critical to our success as businesses.
I couldn't agree with you more. Chris, these are all really incredible points. Thank you so much for being on the show and for bending our ears and giving us all this really incredibly useful information that I think is going to help a lot of companies and sales teams and marketing teams unify and grow and ultimately increase their revenue and increase their bottom line.
Of course, man. And really the thing that we need all leaders of organizations to understand is, if you are not thinking about the way you're selling, the way that your sales, marketing, and service teams are interacting, and you're not thinking about how can we channel our buyer, you're likely going to fail moving into 2024 and beyond.
Wow. Powerful words. Chris, again, thank you for your time. Let everybody know. Make sure you shout out to the camera. Tell them where you're at. Tell them a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. Hey, so Chris Dupre, Impact's Chief Customer Officer and Sales and Marketing Leadership Coach here at Impact. The best way you want to talk to me about what's going on in your business, go ahead and click that Talk to a Coach button on our website, or you can find me on LinkedIn at Chris Dupre. Talk about sales, talk about marketing, talk about AI and communication.
Chris, thank you again. Really appreciate your time. Good to see you.